This happened 2 years ago on our anniversary. My wife and I were celebrating 3 years married, and we decided to both take the day off work and go for a drive down to the beach. It was a bit of a drive, about 3 hours one way. The drive was amazing. We had fantastic conversation and enjoyed all the sights on the way out there. When we arrived, there was only a few hours left of daytime, but we didn't mind. We kind of liked the idea of walking along the sand at night to gaze at the stars and listen to the ocean peacefully without the usual noise that comes with visiting the beach. We ate dinner at a nice steakhouse right on the water, and when we finished, we decided it was time to hit the beach, finally. From the restaurant, we walked to our car, which was parked in the lot right next to the beach entrance. My wife grabbed a sweater and a blanket, while I grabbed a 6-pack and a small cooler I had brought. We headed towards the sand and went through a very old wooden fence with an opening cut out. We walked out towards the water and marveled at the sight of it, and the moon lighting our way beautifully. We stopped and chose a nice spot about 30 yards away from the waves crashing against the sand, and about 70 yards, I'd say, from the wooden fence leading back to our car and the small seaside town that we were in. We unfolded the blanket and sat down on top of it. After a few minutes of talking, kissing, and drinking, we laid down. We were truly amazed by all the stars in the sky, and it was a gorgeous sight. I'd say about 15 minutes later, I felt a presence. I was still watching the stars, but I felt like there was somebody watching us. I sat up and noticed my wife had drifted off and fell asleep. I looked around the beach and saw nothing. It was complete serenity. Then I turned completely around, and this is when my heart stopped. About 15 feet away from us, a man was sitting behind us in the sand. This caught me completely off guard and scared the shit out of me, mainly because he didn't speak when he noticed that I had seen him. He sat in the sand, very close to us, with a giant smile on his face. A giant, extremely creepy smile. I was in shock to see this, and at first was not even able to speak. I glanced at my wife again, who was completely asleep. At that moment, I'm not sure why, but I felt like our lives were in very real danger. I looked up, and the man reacted. His smile disappeared and turned into an angry look. He then pulled out a huge knife from underneath him. I shook my wife awake and said at the same time, "What the fuck are you doing? Are you serious?" In a scared but firm voice. My wife regained her focus and spun around to look at the man. At that moment, he smiled again. His giant smile made me shiver, and my wife gasped when she saw he had a knife and didn't say a word. He didn't respond to me and instead stood up. He clutched a very big, what looked like a kitchen knife, and took a single step towards us. My wife gasped again. I forced myself to do something. I stood up as well and said, "What do you want? You can have our phones and our keys, but I have no cash, man." The man looked completely insane, which was absolutely terrifying. He wore a brown suit, all ripped up. It looked like it came out of a trash can. His long brown hair was a mess, and he looked homeless. Once again, he didn't reply to me. After about 15 seconds of unnerving silence, he did something. He ran up to us very quickly, and my wife screamed. I almost had a heart attack. He stopped before he stepped foot onto our blanket, and once again his smile turned into a crazy and angry-looking frown. I spoke one last time. "Dude, you can have everything. Just be cool, man. You can have a beer." My voice was cracking. I was petrified. I tried to humanize this guy and make him feel almost welcome to our stuff, like what he was doing, like his knife wasn't a big deal. He then spoke to us. He said in a normal, sane voice, "I don't drink." Then he turned around and started walking away from us. Relief hit me like a ton of bricks. I kneeled down and grasped my wife's shoulder. He continued walking away, and then he stopped and turned around again. He didn't look at us, but instead looked up at the sky. Then he turned around once more and made his way through the fence and disappeared into town. My wife started tearing up, and I said, "Let's go." We very quickly grabbed our belongings and started walking down the beach quickly towards a different entrance leading to a parking lot next to the one our car was parked. After circling around the huge parking lot, walking around the restaurant we ate at, we saw people laughing and talking outside. They had no idea what we just experienced. We approached our car. We got inside, and we drove away. We were pretty much silent on the way back home. My wife just hung her head out of the window. We haven't visited the beach since then. A few months ago, I took in a new dog. Her original owners weren't able to bond with her, and they said she was unresponsive and disobedient and didn't have the look they wanted. I've got no idea what they were talking about. She's the best behaved dog I've ever known, and she's downright adorable. So I'm used to people stopping me in the street so they can pet her. Usually, people will ask before they touch her, or at the very least, they'll say something like, "Oh my God, look at that dog," to let me know they're obviously gonna come over and say hello to her. I'm pretty much fine with that. What I'm not fine with is what happened on one of my earlier walks with her. I live in a tiny seaside town, and I kind of take my dog on a tour of all the areas closest to the sea when I walk her. We'll walk along the beach, down the promenade, around the miniature lakes, and then home. Probably not smart to stick to the same route every day, but I've switched things up since this happened. Anyway, we were at the final stage of our walk one evening, making a couple laps around the lakes, when we walked past a man. Now, a lot of old men gather there on a regular basis. I didn't think much of one dude sitting on a bench by the water. I told myself he was staring because my dog was cute. I just passed him by. Then, from behind me, I hear him say, "Sit." And my dog, who was much more obedient than her previous owners let on, sits down and looks up at me all happy and expecting a treat. I frown back at the guy, see that he's still on the bench, and quickly encourage my puppy to start walking again. We haven't even gotten 5 feet further down the path before the guy says, "Sit," and my dog does. I turn around again, already glaring, and see that the man is now on his feet. I tell my dog to keep walking and pick up the pace, trying to get over to the path that leads up to the main street. We're still nowhere near the path when the man yells, "Sit!" And my dog does. She's starting to look confused, but I'm pretty much terrified. He's coming over to us, and he's catching up fairly quickly. He's close enough that even without my glasses, I can tell he's grinning. At that point, I'd had enough. I forgot about getting to the path. I scooped up my dog off the ground and ran straight up the hill to the side of us and climbed over the little fence that separates the lakes from the street. The man didn't follow, but stayed at the bottom of the hill looking up at us, not smiling anymore. I'd never seen him before, and haven't seen him since, and I hope it stays that way. I don't know exactly what his intentions were, but it seemed to me like he was using my dog's obedience to slow me down, to keep me from getting away from him. So I doubt they were good. I'm glad I didn't stick around to find out. Hello. I have a story to tell you. This happened to me about 15 years ago. I lived near the ocean, and I frequented a certain spot on the beach all the time. It was a lonely spot, and not many people ever really showed up there. This one Saturday afternoon, as I recall, I was laying out in the sand in my spot, relaxing and tanning. It's not uncommon for me to fall asleep doing this, as I sometimes did if the sun wasn't too hot on my skin. This one particular day, I did. I woke up a while later to the sun now setting and realized I had slept for quite a while. I looked to my left and saw a woman sitting near me in the sand, but not on a towel. She was wearing jean shorts and a bathing suit top. She had very pretty red hair. At first, I didn't really acknowledge her. There were a couple other people around, but after glancing at her a few times, I noticed she was just staring out into the ocean and didn't turn to look at me or anybody else, or anything for that matter. I felt a bit of curiosity and said hello to her. She said hello back without hesitating, without turning her head to look at me. Right after that, she sprung to her feet and walked away. I thought it was weird, but I didn't really think anything of it. I'd say about 30 minutes later, I packed up my stuff and I left. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and I had a great day relaxing there. Once I was home, I started making myself dinner. I heard my phone ring and walked over to my purse on the counter and pulled it out. It was my mom. We started talking about usual things when I noticed a square, folded piece of paper sticking out of my purse in the midst of our conversation. My mom continued talking, and I pulled it out and unfolded it, confused because I was pretty sure I did not put it in there. I literally dropped the phone when I read what was written. The note said, "I was going to rob you and stab you in the throat, but you just looked too peaceful." I picked up the phone and told my mom what happened, remembering the girl on the beach. We both nearly passed out.